Hi everyone, so we're going to take a look at how we could set up different techniques for unit testing. So I'm just going to go to my desktop, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder on my desktop. So I'm just going to call it mkdir and then space, let me see, I'll call it Jest testing. So right over here I got my folder, I'll drag and drop it over. And right over here I got a brand new project, and I'm just going to start installing some stuff for Jest first. So right over here I'm going to install, so npm install --save-dev jest. So right over here we got our package.json, our node modules, package lock. So here in the package.json, we are going to have to add this script. So what I could do is I will just do comma, scripts, test, and jest. So I have that set up. You could add the -- coverage if you want some more information, but for this video, I'm just going to make it simple because we're going to look at other stuff in the console or terminal. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create the JavaScript folder and the unit test folder as well. So let me just do __test __. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the test. So this is just a new test file, so we'll say sum.test.js. So what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to set up the test. I'll put a test, and this test right here is just supposed to be test. And what it'll do is it will add 2 plus 3 to equal 5. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put expect some sort of sum, and this sum will take the numbers of 2 and 3, and then we'll put dot to b, so what should come back is the number 5. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to have some sort of constant. We'll say sum is equal to require. It's going to grab some sort of pathway, and that pathway is going to be coming from our JavaScript folder. So let's put JavaScript. And what we're going to do here is going to be an index, or what we're going to do here in the JavaScript folder is I'm going to add a sum.js file, and then I will write the function, so sum a and b, and then return a plus b. And then we need to module.exports is equal to sum. So I'm going to save that, and I'll just put a functional comment here, and it'll say the first number, the second number, and this description of the function is the function adds numbers together, returns the addition of 2 numbers. And then I'm going to go back to my test file here, and the require here is going to have that pathway to that JavaScript file. So I'm going to put in quotations, I'm going to navigate backwards with the 2 dots, and then /. I'm going to go into my JavaScript folder, and then I'm going to get that sum file. So I'm going to save it, and we should see here that the sum is this function, And what I'll do next is I will just run the test. So let me just try running npm test. There we go. So we got one passed, so we know that this works. So when we look at our unit tests right over here, we can see that we have some sort of test. We could add a describe around it if we want. So let me just add a little bit more to this so then it has the entire thing set up. So I'll put a describe. And this describe could have multiple tests inside, but I'll just put test to check addition. And I'm going to put this test here. Perfect. And then what I could do here, I could just run it to show you that nothing will change. So you could see here that it's still one passed, nothing changes. It's the exact same thing. So now what we want to do is we want to maybe add some other types of information. We could do something that checks or does something before a test runs or after each test runs. So let's say, for example, I could add something here. So before each test happens, so I could say before each, what I could do is I'll do a console.log of, let's say, file connection. So you could add something else in here, maybe like it sets up a value, a variable or something before it runs a test. And what I could do then is I could, let's run this first so I could show you what I mean. So npm test. So you can see here we get a file connection, and this file connection is in the console log because we console logged it. It does it before whatever tests need to run. So we're doing a file connection, and what we could do here is we could also add a beforeEach here, beforeEach, and then console.log test to start, just as an example. So let me run it. So we should see beforeEach means before this describe runs, we're going to console log this out. Then it's going to come into the describe, and then before it runs the test, it's going to do this beforeEach. So we'll console log this out before it runs the test. So let me save it and I'll run it. So it says file connection and then test to start. And what we could also do is maybe after the test is done, then we can do something else as well. So we could do after each, and after each we can console.log, let's say, test teardown, and then I'll just run it. So now what we see is there's a file connection, which is this beforeEach outside of the describe, and then it goes into the describe, and then before it runs a test, it'll say test to start, and then it'll run the test, and then it'll do the after each, which is the test teardown, so test teardown. And then there's another thing is we could add it after each when this entire describe is done as well. So when this describe is done, we can add a after each, and then we'll say we could console.log file teardown. So let's save that, and I'm going to run it, npm test. So you can see here we get the file connection first before each, and then the test to start. So it will skip this, it'll skip the after each, and it'll go into the describe. It'll do test to start, then it'll do the test teardown, because after it's done running the test, it will run this after each, and then it'll do the file teardown. So the file teardown it'll come right back up here for this after each once this entire describe is done. So you can see that depending on where you add the before each or the after each, it could come before or after the describe, or if you put it inside the describe, it will come before or after the test inside this describe. And the main reason why you may want to do any of these before each or after each is because it could be a place to set up variables. So it could also be a place where you open a connection to a file and then you want to maybe read inside the file in the tests. So it's just a way of starting things at the beginning and then using it in the test later. And then once it's done using it in the test, you can use the after each to maybe set it back to default value or close the file or do something that just pretty much closes the connection or changes the values to the original value. And you can have multiple describe blocks as well. So let's say I copy this describe and I'll say check addition 2. So let's try now the value of 4 and 5. So 4 plus 5 should be 9. So I'm going to save that. So you can see here this describe has its own before each and after each. So we will see this working as well. So so I could change it, so I'll put addition 2, and this one I'll put addition 1, just so you could see it jumping around. Addition 1, and then here addition 2. So once that's saved, I'm going to run this one more time. So we got a file connection right here. So before we start anything, we're going to have a file connection, and then it's going to say test to start addition 1. So it goes in this describe right here. So test to start addition 1. And then what it's going to do is test to tear down addition 1. And then here it's going to go to, so once it's done the before, it's going to then do the test, and then it'll do the after each. So after it's done testing, it will say test teardown addition, which is what we see here. And then what it'll do is it'll go back to the after each. So once this entire describe is done, it will run this after each. It'll say file teardown. And then it's going to go to the next describe. So we have 2 describes. It's going to go to the second describe. And this is where it's going to now have to do the file connection again. So file connection for the before each, before the second describe opens. And once it goes to this describe, then it'll say test to start addition 2. Then it will run the test, and then it'll do the after each, and it'll say the test teardown addition 2. And then once it's done that after each, it will go back up here and do this after each again, which is the file teardown. So you can see, depending where the before each and after each is positioned, it will either run it before the describes and after the describe, or it'll be done before or after each of the tests.